So if you're still taking what customers say at face value, then unfortunately, you're leaving money on the table. Because in this video, I'm going to break down one of the biggest mindset shifts that top appointment setters and closers make. They stop believing what a customer says and start reading what they actually do. And this change alone can transform how you approach cold leads, old leads, or even live objections within the home. And we're going to break it down so that not only you understand, but you can actually teach it to your team as soon as tomorrow. So here's what most reps unfortunately do. The customer says something like, hey, we're not interested. And the rep goes, okay, no worries. And they move on, right? Or the customer says, hey, we're just looking. And the rep goes, got it. Well, just let us know. And the lead gets kind of marked down as cold. But here's the problem with that. Those same customers are actually buying from someone else as soon as 2 weeks later, right? So what happened in between? Well, the answer to that is pretty simple. Their mouth lied, but their actions didn't. And the rep believed the wrong thing. Now, let me be clear, most customers aren't lying maliciously, they're actually just protecting themselves. Because the second that they think that you're about to sell them, they go into defense mode. So instead of saying, hey, we're interested, but we're nervous about the price, what they'll usually end up saying is, we're actually just looking around, or, we're not actually doing any projects right now, or, the classic one that I know you've all heard, hey, we're just getting information right now. Now, these aren't actually facts, they're emotional defense mechanisms, and if you're interpreting those words as truth, then you're actually missing the real signal. The mindset shift that you need to drill into your team is this. The customer's mouth lies, but their feet, their pen, and their clicks don't. So let me show you what I mean by this. If someone filled out your form online, then no matter what they say, they are curious. If somebody stopped at your booth at an event, then no matter what they say, they are considering. If somebody entered a sweepstakes, they're interested in the thing, even if it's not the timing. And if somebody gave you their number in store, then they made an active choice to engage. People don't just volunteer their contact information to be marketed to unless there's something inside them that's wondering if now is the time, even if it was just subconscious. And that's what we call the seed of need. It might be tiny, it might be subtle, but it's real. And your job is to trust that seed and ignore the smoke screens that their mouth is going to throw up to protect it. So here's the best way to explain it to your team. Let's say someone says, hey, I'm not interested in buying a car, I have absolutely no intention. But they spend their Friday afternoon walking around a used car dealership. Do you know anyone, and I mean anyone, who hangs out at car dealerships just like for fun? Of course not, right? That's ridiculous. So what's actually happening here? Well, what they're doing is they're testing the waters. They're not actually ready to admit they're in market, and that might even be to themselves. But their feet have said yes, and their behavior has also said yes, right? And that same logic is behind the homeowner that fills out the sweepstake or clicks the ad or engages with a canvasser. If they're in the lot, there's a reason. If they gave you their number, there's a reason, right? And that reason is what you work from, not what their mouth tells you on the callback itself. So here's what separates elite appointment setters from the average ones. Average reps accept verbal resistance as fact, whereas elite ones see it as fear. And instead, they start thinking like investigators. They don't get emotional, instead they'll get curious. Because once you start reading behavior instead of statements, your whole strategy changes entirely. You stop disqualifying people too early, you stop writing off leads that are just, browsing, and you stop walking away from what could have been a 25K job just because the customer didn't sound interested at that time. So how do we actually make this actionable, right? Well, the first step is to reframe your definition of a real lead. If they gave you their info, they're a lead. And I don't care if that was yesterday or 11 months ago, their action is proof. Their words are just noise. The second actionable step is never ask, are you still interested? Or never open like that at least. Because what that does, it gives them an easy out. Because remember, their fear is going to make them say no, even if their interest is alive. So instead, you want to ask open-ended questions like this. What are you noticing that you're not kind of too crazy about around the home? So what it does is it doesn't trigger defensiveness, but instead invites them to be reflective. And then the third step to walk away with is to use their history as leverage. If they say we're not doing anything right now, you can say, look, totally understand. I just noticed that, you stopped by our booth at a fair back in April and entered to win that deck makeover. Curious kind of what caught your eye about it back then, right? What you're doing here is not challenging them, you're just kind of jogging their memory, and often that original need starts to kind of bubble up again. And here's what all of this comes down to. In 2025, sales is no longer about overcoming objections. It's about understanding what caused the customer to engage in the first place and then helping them rediscover that need. That's why average reps get callbacks that never happen, and why elite reps close jobs from leads that are quote unquote cold. And in those cases, it's because they stopped believing what the customer said and instead started working off what the customer actually did. So if your reps are, getting hung up on, we're just looking or we're not interested, they don't need better rebuttals. They just need better instincts. And the second that they shift their mindset from trusting their words to trusting their behavior, then everything starts to change. Appointments get easier, resistance drop, deals start to actually close. And, if you want a breakdown of exactly, how to train that, I've got, a couple of sample scripts you can take a look at that are linked below. And if this video helped you or your team, then, hit subscribe, because I post practical content like this every week to help home improvement companies close more from the leads that they already have. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.